We often convince ourselves that forward movement requires perfect conditions, flawless execution, or some sort of grand readiness. We imagine that we need to be clear on every detail before we can begin, that the right moment has to arrive before progress can take place. But life rarely offers that kind of clarity, and if you demand perfection before you act, you'll almost never act at all. Progress isn't built on perfection, it's built on persistence. It's built on the willingness to keep moving step by step, even when the steps are clumsy, even when the path is uncertain. Think of how a child learns to walk. No child waits until their balance is perfect, until their muscles are strong enough, or until they have mastered the mechanics of coordination. They stumble, they fall, they get up, and they try again. And through that imperfect repetition, the skill develops. If a child refused to walk until they could do it flawlessly, they would never take a step, but we forget that principle as adults. We hold ourselves hostage to our own fear of failure, thinking we need mastery before we even begin. That's not how growth works. Mastery is on the far side of persistence, not at the beginning. Psychologically, this is a matter of how the human nervous system adapts. Our minds and bodies learn by trial, by error, by repetition. The feedback loop of effort and failure is precisely what builds competence. If you shy away from that loop because you don't want to be embarrassed, because you're afraid of imperfection, you cut yourself off from the very mechanism that would make you capable. And what happens then? You stagnate, you retreat. You convince yourself that because you're not perfect, you shouldn't try, and life begins to shrink around you. Philosophically, this is tied to the human confrontation with chaos. The world is not ordered and predictable in the way we would like it to be. It's turbulent, uncertain, and constantly shifting. If you wait until conditions are tidy and certain, you'll remain paralyzed, because that state of perfect order never arrives. The only rational strategy is to move forward through the chaos, to test yourself against it, and to learn from what resists you. In that way, persistence becomes not only a practical tool, but a philosophical stance. It's the decision to affirm life by engaging with it, imperfectly but consistently, rather than retreating into passivity. There's also an important psychological truth about persistence. Momentum matters more than intensity. People often burn out because they think progress requires extraordinary effort all at once. They sprint, they collapse, and then they stop. But persistence is different. It's about keeping the wheel turning, even if slowly. It's about showing up daily, making small adjustments, and refusing to abandon the path just because it feels difficult or the results aren't immediate. Those small, persistent steps accumulate, and in time, they become transformation. Take an example from history. Thomas Edison famously failed thousands of times before creating a working light bulb. If his standard had been perfection at the start, he would have abandoned the project after the first dozen failures. But his persistence reframed failure itself. It became feedback, information, progress disguised as error. Each attempt, imperfect though it was, carried him closer to success. This is the pattern of human achievement across every field. Persistence over perfection, iteration over paralysis. And you can see this in your own life too, if you reflect carefully. Any skill you've ever mastered, whether it's driving, speaking, working, or even social interaction, wasn't achieved in one flawless motion. It was built through repetition, mistakes, and correction. You're already the beneficiary of persistence, but we often forget that truth and demand perfection of ourselves in the present. Now, there is something humbling about this approach, because it forces you to accept that you will fail repeatedly. You will embarrass yourself. You will confront your limitations. But humility is not weakness. It's the soil from which confidence grows. The alternative is arrogance masquerading as caution. I won't try until I know I can succeed. But that's not caution. That's fear disguised as wisdom. And it robs you of the chance to discover who you could become if you just kept moving, imperfectly but faithfully. The psychological literature on resilience supports this. Studies consistently show that people who view setbacks as temporary and as opportunities for growth are far more likely to succeed long-term than those who interpret failure as evidence of personal inadequacy. It's not talent alone that predicts success. It's persistence, the capacity to keep showing up, to keep adapting, to keep moving forward when it would be easier to retreat. And here's the paradox. If you embrace persistence, perfection begins to emerge naturally, not as a starting condition, but as an outcome of repeated imperfect effort. What looks flawless at the end is built from countless flawed beginnings. This is true in art, in science, in business, in relationships, and in personal growth. What the world admires as mastery is simply persistence over time, disguised as perfection. So when you think about your own journey, the question isn't, am I ready to do this perfectly? The question is, am I willing to do this persistently? Because persistence, unlike perfection, is always available to you. You can always choose to take another step. You can always choose to try again. And that choice, repeated, is what builds momentum, resilience, and eventually mastery. The temptation to wait for perfection will always be there. It's seductive because it feels safe, but safety in that form is an illusion. It's the safety of stagnation. True safety lies in growth, and growth is only possible if you're willing to move forward, flawed and trembling, but determined. So keep moving forward, not perfectly, but persistently. Because in the end, persistence outlasts failure, and perfection, if it ever arrives, is simply the shadow of persistence faithfully practiced. We often make the mistake of believing that progress should be smooth, that life should unfold in a straight line upward, without interruption or setback. But that is a fantasy, and a destructive one. Life, by its very nature, is full of obstacles, sometimes small inconveniences, sometimes catastrophic disruptions. And yet, it is precisely those obstacles that form the conditions for strength. Adversity is not a detour from progress. It is the very material out of which progress is built. You don't develop strength in the absence of resistance. Think of a muscle. It grows only when it is tested, when it is pushed beyond its comfort zone, when it tears and repairs stronger than before. In the same way, your character develops under pressure. If everything were easy, if the path were always smooth, you would remain fragile, untested, unprepared for the inevitable challenges that life will throw at you. It is only in adversity that you discover what you are made of, and only through adversity that you can become more than you currently are. Psychologically, this is tied to what researchers call asterisk stress inoculation. Asterisk, just as a vaccine introduces a small controlled dose of a virus to strengthen the immune system, exposure to manageable levels of stress builds resilience. When you confront difficulty, even if it unsettles you, your nervous system adapts. You become more capable of handling future stress. If, on the other hand, you avoid all difficulty, if you insulate yourself from every challenge, you remain vulnerable. The first real obstacle you encounter will overwhelm you because you will have never practiced carrying weight. Philosophically, this principle reaches even deeper. The Stoics believed that adversity was not merely something to endure, but something to welcome, because it revealed the truth about a person's character. Anyone can appear calm when life is easy. It is in hardship that virtue is tested. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, wrote that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He meant that obstacles are not interruptions to your progress. They asterisk your progress, because they force you to adapt, to rethink, to grow stronger. The very thing you wish wasn't there turns out to be the thing you needed most. Consider history for a moment. Every figure we admire, scientists, leaders, artists, reformers, was shaped by adversity. Nelson Mandela endured 27 years in prison, and it was that crucible that transformed him from a man of conviction into a global symbol of reconciliation and resilience. Helen Keller, deprived of sight and hearing, did not simply endure adversity. She turned it into a platform for wisdom that has inspired millions. These individuals did not grow despite adversity. They grew because of it. Their strength, their wisdom, their impact was forged in the fire of hardship. On a more ordinary level, you can see the same pattern in your own life. Think back to moments where you were tested, where things fell apart, where you were rejected, where you failed. At the time, those experiences may have felt unbearable. But if you reflect honestly, those were the seasons that changed you most profoundly. Those were the moments that gave you skills, perspective, or resilience you couldn't have acquired any other way. Adversity leaves scars, but scars are not just wounds. They are evidence of healing, and they are reminders of battles survived. Now, none of this is to romanticize suffering. Adversity is painful and sometimes devastating. But the point is not that pain is good. The point is that pain is instructive. It carries the potential for transformation if you are willing to engage with it rather than collapse under it. There's a profound difference between being crushed by hardship and being shaped by it. One destroys you, the other refines you, and the difference is found in the choice to keep moving forward, even when everything in you wants to stop. Think about the image of a person climbing a mountain. Each step is harder than the one before, the air thinner, the terrain steeper. The adversity is not a sign to quit, it's the very proof that you're climbing, that you're ascending. If the climb were easy, the summit would mean nothing. It is the difficulty that makes the achievement significant, and it is the difficulty that makes the climber strong enough to stand at the top. From a psychological perspective, adversity also clarifies values. Life is smooth, it's easy to drift, to lose sight of what matters, to waste time on the trivial. But when you're under pressure, when you're forced to confront hardship, you discover what you truly care about. Struggle strips away illusions and forces you to choose priorities. That clarity itself is a gift, even if it comes wrapped in pain. And here's the essential truth: without adversity, there can be no authentic confidence. Confidence is not built by repeating affirmations or imagining success. It's built by surviving real tests. You know you can handle the future because you have handled the past. You know you can face what comes next because you have faced what already was, and you didn't give up. That knowledge is the core of genuine self-belief, and it only comes through adversity. So, when adversity arrives, and it will, because life guarantees it, you have a choice. You can see it as evidence that you're cursed, that you should retreat, that you should stop trying. Or you can see it as an invitation to grow, to strengthen, to discover what you are capable of becoming. And if you accept that invitation, if you keep moving forward through the struggle, you will come out not weaker but stronger, not bitter but wiser. Adversity is not the enemy of progress. It is the engine of it. It is the fire that tempers steel, the resistance that builds the muscle, the storm that teaches the sailor how to steer. Without it, you remain soft, fragile, untested. With it, you become someone formidable. So Dawn, decurse the obstacles in your path, learn from them, use them, let them shape you, because every step forward through adversity is a step into strength, and strength is what makes real progress possible.